Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
If you're watching this, congratulations. You made it to 2026. And if you're also watching this, we can also acknowledge that 2025 sucked. It was a bad year for Browns fans, for Cleveland sports fans. It just wasn't great. I mean, like across the board, the vibes haven't been great about 2025, no matter what your interest is. And that's what we're here to talk about. From a Cleveland Browns perspective, the 5 worst things about 2025, the 5 worst things about this year from a Cleveland Browns perspective. We're going to jump into that. But before I do, I got to thank my sponsor, Sleeper. Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required. And also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code Worst Take. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper. Number 5 worst thing about 2026 is watching the AFC open up while the Browns are like painfully irrelevant this year. This has been the season of change in the NFL. We're looking at an AFC playoff picture that for decades has been dominated by Hall of Fame names. We're talking about Brady. We're talking about Peyton Manning, right? Then we're talking about basically Mahomes and Brady, and then Mahomes and then Joe Burrow for like a quick, brief second there. We've watched this AFC picture be dominated by the top quarterbacks in the conference, quarterbacks who are in conversations of greatness. And we've looked from the outside looking in from various places in Cleveland during those eras. And that's always been difficult. But now this year, what we saw hasn't even really been a changing of a guard. It's just been the falling of the old guard. The Kansas City Chiefs have taken themselves out of playoff contention completely. The Baltimore Ravens just don't feel like the same Baltimore Ravens team that used to dominate the AFC picture in the same way. The Cincinnati Bengals, the only other team in this Mahomes era to get to the championship out the AFC, has not been able to make the playoffs in the last couple of years. We're going to have what feels like, for the first time in the AFC, a new champion, whether it be Josh Allen representing the AFC, Lamar Jackson, Drake May. For the first time in a long time, it's going to feel like a changing of the guard in the AFC. And unfortunately, when that change of the guard happens, the Cleveland Browns are completely irrelevant to the conversation of that changing of the guard. And that's been frustrating, right? It's something that we have been waiting for to happen for a while, right? Since the 2020 season, where we're like, oh, well, we're catching Mahomes at his peak and we're not good enough to beat Mahomes, but maybe we could sneak into that next window. Well, that next window happened this year. You have the great year from Myles Garrett, the great year from this defense, and you just can't make anything happen of it because you're so far behind at the quarterback position and you're so far behind offensively from where you would hope to be when that opportunity opens up. Can't help but feel like 2025 could have been the Browns' year in an alternate universe where they get the quarterback position correct. Maybe in 2018, maybe with the Baker Mayfield trade never happening, right? But it just feels like this year would have been a lot more hopeful if the Browns had made some better decisions at quarterback in the long run. But because the Browns haven't made those decisions, this year ended up kind of feeling like a lame duck kind of season. that leads me to my number 4 worst thing about 2025. A absolute wasted year for what was a masterpiece of a defense. And what is ironic is this defense might get torn apart after a year where they probably played some of the best football in the NFL. Even the lows of the defense this year, complaining about him feels so melodramatic. I know people are like, "Oh well, we're tired of Jim Schwartz, and he's so predictable, and every once in a while a team can run on it." And it's like, okay, the Browns gave up like 22 points in every game that they've played in at worst. The defense has been amazing. You're getting a historic year from Myles Garrett, where he's likely to win the Defensive Player of the Year almost unanimously. And you wasted it because and look, I don't like to use the term wasted because it implies that what the defense has done this year has no value. And I don't think that's true. What Myles has done this year has tremendous value to Myles' legacy and his career and all of that. But where the perspective of this season being wasted is kind of true is team success, right? This defense could have been the anchor to a championship level football team. This defense could have been the driving force behind a team set to break out the AFC in a year where the changing of the guard is inevitable. But instead of those things being things that we're even discussing or hyping up, we're talking about whether the Browns are going to draft a quarterback because their draft pick is that fucking terrible. That's kind of where they are. And that's so unfortunate. Again, the combination of these two things has been dreadful to watch these whole years, especially when you consider that the Browns' original plan was always to go all in 2026, in 2027, in an attempt to win a championship behind Deshaun Watson. And obviously, those plans fell through because Deshaun Watson never was able to live up to even a fraction of the hopes that the Browns had for him when they brought him in. We're just sitting in the broken pieces of the hopes that were created for Deshaun Watson when he got traded here, and we're just kind of sifting through the aftermath right now. That's what 2025 has been. It's been a sift through the broken pieces of a broken era, of a broken promise of the Deshaun Watson experiment. We've spent all of 2025 cleaning up the shit left over from that trade. And hopefully in 2026, since all that shit is pretty much cleaned up for the most part, right? We got our draft picks back. We have a path to money again, right? Insurance settlements here and there. We're done dealing with Watson for the most part. Maybe we can finally step forward and be something productive, but wading through the shit like the Browns have been wading through the shit, my bad. The last 2 seasons, it has not been fun. It has not produced great football, and it has not been enjoyable. These last 2 years have been brutal. This year, on top of last year, has been especially brutal. And I'm thankful that the year is over, so we can finally stop having to sift through again the leftover garbage of the hopes of the Watson era. Now we can move towards something different. Third worst thing about 2025, injuries this season, especially on the offensive side of the ball, was started with injuries and has ended with injuries. Almost all of these injuries, for some reason, have centered around the offensive line. I've never seen anything quite like it. The Cleveland Browns have lost like 9 offensive linemen this year. Almost like all of them are on injured reserve. And somehow the only guy who's still healthy, and healthy is a relative word because Joe Bitonio is not healthy right now, but he's playing because he is at the end of his rope as an NFL player, which I'm saying he's going to retire at the end of the year, so he doesn't give a fuck about what he may or may not be able to carry over from last season. He's just trying to grind through it out of pride. But everybody else is injured. Everybody else that the Browns start on the offensive line is injured. Joe Bitonio's been the only one able to stay healthy, and that has definitely torpedoed any hopes that this team had of being decent. Right out the gate, the DeJuan Jones injury was definitely just a huge kneecap in this team's potential. You rely on Jack Conklin. Jack Conklin ends up on injured reserve. There's absolutely no surprise there. And then Dwight Teller ends up on injured reserve. Ethan Posick ends up on injured reserve. The only guy who hasn't ended up on injured reserve so far is literally Joe Bitonio. It is because if Joe Bitonio went on injured reserve, he would basically be ending his career, and that's not how he wants to go out. And respect to Joe for making it 17 games, going through everything that he went through this season. And I'm thankful that he got to go out on his own terms. But injuries have destroyed this team from an offensive line standpoint. It has hurt this team's future when you talk about the injuries to younger guys who you're hoping could carry a load going forward, like a DeJuan Jones. You're talking about Quincy Junkins getting hurt, another injury-riddled year for Cedric Tillman, who I think is a promising player, but we never get a long enough look at to really know what he is or what he isn't. It's just been injury riddled. It's been unfortunate. Hell, Harold Faden got injured in the last game. Carson Schlesinger's injured now. Just too many injuries this season on top of everything else that has happened for this football team. The number two thing that I have written down here is the downfall of Kevin Stefanski. Now, some people are excited about this. Some people are not happy about this, but it is not a good thing that the Cleveland Browns are likely to part ways with their long-term head coach, right? If things had gone the way that we have wanted, we would be nowhere close to a conversation about firing Kevin Stefanski. And firing Kevin Stefanski is just an admission of the failure of the last 2 years. And again, more of the residue and the damage from that failed trade for Deshaun Watson, because part of the reason you're in this position where you got to fire Kevin is because of the Watson trade. It's not the whole thing, but it's certainly part of it, right? It accelerated a lot of things. This has not been fun. As somebody who was hopeful that Kevin Stefanski could establish himself as the first truly long-term coach of the Cleveland Browns in my lifetime, this being his ending, the last 2 seasons being how he gets remembered and how he goes out, despite the fact that he has achieved some legitimately impressive things as a head coach in Cleveland, having to let go of a head coach that I truly do think will be good somewhere else because of all the things that have transpired over the last couple of years. It's just not fun. It's not fortunate. It's not a good thing, right? It's the same thing as like when Baker Mayfield had to go, where I understood why you had to move on from Baker Mayfield at the time that you moved on from Baker Mayfield. But nothing about that shit was good, right? Like having to admit that this guy you invested the number 1 overall pick in, you don't believe can be good enough to win a championship with, is not a fun realization to make, nor is it the preferable realization to make, and nor is it something that anybody should celebrate, right? Kevin Stefanski, in coming to the realization that he is a good coach, but maybe not the coach that we need in the moment that the Browns are in right now, despite the fact that he might be the right coach for another team in a couple of years or so, it sucks. That sucks because there's a chance that he pops up somewhere else. The Browns are struggling and he's coaching well, and we're sitting there having FOMO again, like we have had the last couple of years due to so many other decisions that the Browns have made. Nothing about this is good, right? Again, in a perfect world, we would be excited about the future with Kevin. We would be talking about him as the next Andy Reid, but that's not the timeline that we live in. And now we live in a timeline where people are going to be worried about him being sorry, similar to Bill Belichick in '95 for Cleveland. We'll see if that ends up being the case. I think they're 2 vastly different coaches there. Bill Belichick was a legitimate genius on the defensive side of the ball. I don't think Kevin is a legit genius on the offensive side of the ball, but I do think Kevin is better at the management stuff than Bill ever was. But we'll see what happens with Kevin going forward. But the Kevin era falling apart, crumbling apart in the way that it has over these last couple of years and really picked up in this season has been really damaging, and it sucks. There's nothing good about it. All right, the number one worst thing of 2025, you know exactly what the answer is. Another year of these stupid goddamn quarterback wars. I'm so tired of QB wars. I'm so tired of the flame war between the fan base about what quarterback you like and what quarterback you don't. All it leads to is people saying dumb shit about players that they have not taken enough time to research simply because that player is in the pathway of the player that they like. I have heard so many uneducated, uninformed, dumbass Fernando Mendoza and Dante Moore takes over the last month. I've heard so many stupid Shador Sanders takes over the last few months. I've heard so many stupid Dylan Gabriel takes over the last few months. I can't wait for this shit to be over. Let me tell you, I don't care who ends up being the franchise quarterback, but I pray to God that 2026 provides us a franchise quarterback, because if I never have to participate in one of these stupid conversations where people just decide to purposely be and just to prove a point on the internet so they can ride whatever quarterback they decide at the time they like, I will be better off for it. I am so tired of seeing the game of football that I love, the study of football that I love, be debased and downgraded into just frequent. I'm so tired of it. I'm so sick of it. People get so sensitive about whatever quarterback they decide to attach themselves to that they can't handle any criticism about any of these quarterbacks. It is the most annoying thing about covering the Browns. It is the most annoying thing about covering football in general, is how people act over quarterbacks. And I can't wait for the day where we're not having this fucking about quarterbacks that are on the roster of the team currently, and people are just like tearing both guys on the team apart because they want to prove a point about the guy that they're currently so they can be right and win a stupid argument on the internet. I am over it. I hate talking about quarterbacks on this channel. I have to, because obviously it's the most important position, but I can't stand it. I hate every comment that I get almost about quarterbacks, because people lose their mind when it comes to a quarterback. You tell somebody a quarterback that they love is oh my God. People will create conspiracy theories about you to justify how you don't believe the same thing about a quarterback as them. It is the dumbest thing about 2025. It's the dumbest thing about the internet. It's the dumbest thing about talking about football on the internet. It is my least favorite thing. And again, I pray for the day where we have a quarterback where at maximum we're arguing with other teams about how good we think our guy is, instead of arguing within the fan base about which guy we think can quarterback this team to fucking wins better. You know what I mean? It's all just hated it all. Can't stand it. If the Browns draft somebody and that ends up being the guy, fucking awesome. I'm ready to get behind it. If the Browns trade for somebody, he ends up being the guy, fucking awesome. I'm ready to get behind it. If Shador Sanders wants to throw for 12 touchdowns to start the year and proves he's the guy early on in 26, let's get fucking behind it. But I cannot do another year of Dylan Gabriel versus Shador, or Shador versus the field, or this and that, or is Kenny Pickett, or is he getting the reps? I can't do it anymore. I'm gonna lose my mind. So please, let's leave that shit in 2026 and hope that by the time we are in November of 2026, we're saying to ourselves, our quarterback is better than your quarterback, and we're not having these internal quarterback wars anymore, because I'm over it. Hope the bleep covered up all the cuss words. I'm sorry that was a little bit of a rant to end this one, but man, I had to get that off my chest. This is, I got to stop myself before I get fired. Y'all have a good one. Have an even better day. Enjoy the new year. Peace.